Reading 97 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 3, Great Animal House, November 8th, 1947. Personality and essence, or outer and inner man, or in my case, Nicoll and I. When you act from the work teaching, as for example, you do not speak scandal when you might, then you act beyond the pleasure principle. If you do only what gives you pleasure, you do not work on yourself. Only then the question arises, what gives you essential pleasure, and what forms of pleasure are due to false personality? You all know by now that the man who acts always from a desire to produce a good impression, to add to reputation, to be well thought of, acts only from his outer side, that is, his false, world-turned side. Inner goodwill he has none. He does nothing from his interior side, so he is acting his goodness. The central attack of Christ was on the Pharisees, that is, you and me, not people who lived 2,000 years ago. As has been so often said, the Pharisee in you is the false personality that does everything for the sake of every subtle form of self-glory, even to fasting and praying all day. Like the hypocrites mentioned in the Gospels who love to stand and pray in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets. The word hypocrite comes from the Greek zoupiktis, which means an actor on the stage. Yes, this is the tragedy of so many people who regard themselves as devout, and so on. They are not so, interiorly, in the inner man, the inner woman. If all outer social restraints were removed, they would neither fast nor pray. That is, everything they do is impure. This is well illustrated in the parable of the people who prayed. This parable was spoken unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous, and set all others at naught. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not as the rest of men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week, I give tithes of all I get. But the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Luke 18:10-13. You have heard all this before. Very well, but have you observed it in yourself? For this work starts from self-observation, a long journey. That is, it is internal. Its direction is inwards. Its result lies only in self-revelation, in seeing and acknowledging what is not really you, not this imagined you, and ending up with the reaching of that inner goal that all esoteric teaching speaks of, and which Christ calls the kingdom of heaven, which is within you. He adds, of course, that you have to be reborn before this is possible. The work says, personality must become passive before any inner development can take place. Yes, and do you see it is the same idea? At present, say in me, Dr. Nicoll is active, and in you, if your name is Smith, Mr. Smith is active. Now in my case, Dr. Nicoll, and in Smith's case, Mr. Smith, is the personality, and especially the false personality to which he attaches such value, and so is so hurt and offended by life. I will once more remind you that we are born with essence, which is pure but not developed. Then, born in a world of sleeping people who tell lies. Essence stops growing. It can only grow through truth and becomes surrounded by acquired personality, typical local attitudes, etc., by imitated things, not real things, not internally seen truth. So a man becomes a disharmony. Why? Because his truth is all wrong. His taking of himself is all wrong. His very feeling of I is all wrong. He has lost his inner relation to himself and developed a false realness. This is false personality. We are all in this false realness, and all feel lost and wish to return. We are nostalgic, yes, but where, to what do we wish to return? Perhaps you know, or imagine you know. Perhaps you have never had this feeling, which goes inwards rightly, and have taken it outwards, as dislike of everyone and everything, and discontent, and all the rest of the feelings of not being properly treated. Yes, then indeed you are in disharmony. That is, you are taking everything wrongly, including even your darling self. Now this return, this place we deeply, nostalgically wish for, is not possible to realize unless a man, a woman, knows something as to what it is necessary to do about it. Instructions are scattered about in the Gospels, not in the right order. On this point, the work teaches us that a man must first awaken before he can die, and that he must die if he wishes to be reborn. Our work here is about awakening. A man must awaken to the multiplicity of his being, to his negative emotions, to his internal considering, to his continual identifying with everything. He must awaken to the different eyes in him that always speak in his name. He must awaken to his inner contradictions. In fact, he must reach the note me in the work octave called realization of personal difficulties. All this is necessary before a man can die, because otherwise he does not know what to die to, and may even attempt to die to the wrong things. In this connection, you will remember how sometimes the work speaks of going against one's mechanicalness. You must understand that if we seek to live more consciously, we cannot simply live mechanically all day long if we are doing this work. You know how the work speaks of people being asleep, and yet imagining all the time that they are fully conscious of all they do. One, therefore, has to realize the fact that one is not properly conscious, or as the Gospels say, awake, a painful matter. So it can be said that the study of this work enables one better to understand the Gospels in this inner sense. So this work is called esoteric Christianity. Esoteric simply means inner, and exoteric means outer. A parable has, for example, an inner meaning. The widow's cruse and the oil do not mean an actual cruse and oil. In order to start on the inner journey so that one returns, inner meaning is required, and so self-observation is necessary. One must see false personality and see it again and again and again for days, months, and years, until one begins to separate from it interiorly and no longer says I to it, no longer takes it as I, and no longer puts all one's psychic force into it. And all this time you will be hurt and hit if you are in the right atmosphere. Then at last, false personality is passive. This new state is the beginning of that journey of which we speak.